My mother kicked me out of the church for getting pregnant out of wedlock. The day I revealed my pregnancy in church started with morning sickness and ended with my mother disowning me. But what happened next made my mother change her decision. I'm a sophomore in college, majoring in psychology, and that's where I met Glenn, last fall, in our Intro to Research Methods class. At first, we were just two students trying to make sense of long lectures, complicated articles, and endless APA citations. We teamed up to study for the midterm, and I didn't think much of it. But something about Glenn stuck with me from the very first day. He had this soft, calm way of talking that made everything seem less overwhelming. Complex topics turned clear as glass when he explained them. And his smile, well, his smile could light up a whole lecture hall. During one of our study sessions, he caught me watching him instead of my notes. "Faith, you're staring again," he teased. My cheeks burned with embarrassment. I wanted to disappear under the table. "Can't help it if you're distracting," I shot back, trying to sound playful. He laughed, and I laughed. And just like that, it felt like we were the only two people in the room, sharing this little moment that nobody else understood. That's how it began. Quiet and sweet, like a breeze sneaking in through an open window. From there, things moved naturally. After class, we'd grab coffee from the shop near the quad, sometimes sitting on the grass with our cups and talking about our professors, our classes, and whatever random thoughts came to mind. Eventually, coffee turned into hours at the campus diner, picking at plates of waffle fries we never seemed to finish. That diner became our spot, full of late-night laughter, shared secrets, and something deeper growing beneath the surface. Glenn opened up about his life. He told me about growing up in the countryside, playing in the fields until the sun went down, the way his mom used to call him in for dinner with a cowbell. He talked about wanting to become a counselor and how he loved the idea of helping people figure out their lives. I told him about my dad. I lost him when I was just 5. He was my first hero, the one who gave me my first teddy bear, who called me Firefly because I lit up every room I entered. When I talked about him, Glenn didn't try to fill the silence or change the subject. He just listened, really listened. That meant more than anything. One night, after a long study session, we sat on the porch swing outside my mama's house. The stars were scattered above us like someone had spilled glitter across the sky. Glenn looked at me, his eyes soft, and said, "Your dad would be so proud of you. Following your dreams, helping people through psychology." He'd be beaming. Then he reached over and gently held my hand. That's when I knew we weren't just friends anymore. His lips touched mine under that starlit sky, and everything inside me fluttered. The moment felt so right, like it had been waiting to happen all along. But telling Mama was a different story. When I finally worked up the courage and mentioned Glenn to her over dinner, she gave a small smile and said, "That's nice, sugar. Don't forget you've got that big exam coming up." That was it. That's how my mama, Claudia, always is. Practical, quiet, and deeply private. Since Daddy passed, she's poured every ounce of herself into raising me and tending to her plants. She never dated again, never showed the slightest interest in meeting someone new. Some nights, I catch her gazing at Daddy's photo on the mantle, her face soft with something between sadness and longing. It breaks my heart. I tried once, just once, to ask her about it. "Mama," I said gently, "don't you ever get lonely?" She reached out and smoothed the wrinkles in her skirt, then smiled at me with that same faraway look. "I've got you," she said. "That's all the company I need." I never brought it up again. For a while, everything felt like it was on track. Glenn and I were happy. School was manageable, and life seemed steady. But then, one morning, I woke up and something felt off. I was dizzy, weak, and nauseous. The smell of breakfast drifting from the kitchen made my stomach twist in knots. I tried to sit up, but the heaviness wouldn't let me. That's when the thought hit me, fast and hard. Oh no. The nausea, the fatigue, that sinking, unmistakable feeling in the pit of my stomach. My mind raced back to a few weeks ago, to the night Glenn and I had taken our relationship to the next level. We'd been careful, but nothing is ever guaranteed. Could it be? I tried not to panic, but the worry settled over me like a storm cloud. I'd always imagined finishing school, starting a career, building a life, and maybe one day far down the line, starting a family. But that morning, everything seemed to blur. Questions swirled in my head, louder than the birds chirping outside. My window, was I pregnant? The thought echoed again and again, and all I could do was sit there, heart pounding, wondering what came next. I was terrified. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open the drawer where I had stashed the pregnancy tests I'd bought. In secret. My breath came in short, uneven bursts as I fumbled to unwrap the box. Somehow, despite all my hoping and praying, this tiny stick now held the power to change everything. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, whispering under my breath, "Please, please, please let me be wrong." But deep down, I already knew the truth. Minutes passed like hours as I stared at the little plastic window, hoping for just one line, anything. but what I feared. But there they were, two unmistakable pink lines, side by side, bold and clear, positive. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear my own thoughts. The room seemed to tilt sideways as the realization hit me. I slowly slid down onto the cold bathroom floor, the test still clutched in my trembling hands. "This can't be happening," I whispered, trying to make the words untrue by repeating them. "I'm only 19. I'm barely out of childhood myself. I can't have a baby. I must have sat there for a long time." Tears drying on my cheeks, my mind spinning in 100 different directions. When I finally stood up, it was like my body moved on its own. I started pacing the bedroom, whispering to myself in a panic. What am I gonna do? What am I gonna tell? Mama? The thought of her finding out made my stomach twist in knots again. Not from the nausea this time, but from sheer dread. Mama, Claudia, is a strong woman, proud and deeply rooted in tradition. Since Daddy passed, she's poured her whole heart into raising me right. I'd always tried to live up to that, to honor everything she gave up for me. And now this, a baby out of wedlock? I knew how she felt about that. I could practically hear her voice in my head, her disappointment louder than any yell could ever be. I imagined her face falling, her lips pressed in that tight, unreadable line she wore when she was truly hurt. I didn't know how to face her, so for the next few days, I didn't. I hid away in my room like a ghost, avoiding the kitchen, ducking out the back door to throw up in the mornings, and pretending everything was fine when it was anything but. "Faith, honey, dinner's ready," she called out on Monday evening. "Sorry, Mama," I called back through the door. "Got a huge psychology paper due tomorrow. I'll grab something later." I hated lying, but I couldn't bring myself to sit across the table from her, not with this secret growing inside me, literally and figuratively. The guilt pressed heavier every time I heard her voice. The next morning, she knocked on my door, gentle like always. "Baby girl, I made your favorite pancakes." I swallowed hard. "Thanks, Mama, but I already ate a granola bar." Got an early study group meeting. Each excuse came quicker than the last, and by Wednesday, I was tangled in a web of lies I couldn't escape. "Faith, Mrs. Jones brought over her famous casserole. I put some aside for you. Got finals coming up, Mama. I really need to focus." But by Thursday, Mama had had enough. She didn't knock this time, just opened my bedroom door and stood there, her arms crossed, and that unmistakable mom stare fixed on me. The kind of stare that could melt steel and make you confess anything, whether you meant to or not. "Now hold on just a minute," she said, voice calm but firm. "Since when do you skip my pancake breakfasts? You love those pancakes. And don't think I haven't noticed you running to the bathroom every morning." I froze, my back still, turned toward her, praying she'd leave it alone. "Just stressed about exams," I mumbled, eyes glued to the floor. "Uh-huh," she said slowly, with that tone that meant she was 2 steps ahead of me. "And I suppose stress is why you haven't touched your coffee in days. The same coffee you swear you can't live without." "My study group, they suggested I cut back on caffeine," I said, wincing at how weak it sounded. There was a silence, one that stretched too long. Finally, Mama spoke again, more gently this time. "My dear Faith," she said, and I heard her voice soften. "In all your years of schooling, I've never seen you skip meals during finals. Never seen you so pale, never seen you so quiet. Something's going on with you, and we both know it ain't just studying," Mama said, her voice steady but edged with concern. She stood in my doorway, arms crossed, eyes narrowing like she could see straight through me. I didn't give her the chance to press further. I grabbed my backpack, slinging it over my shoulder like it weighed nothing, though my legs felt like lead. "Sorry, Mama, I'm late for the library." "Group project," I called as I rushed past her and down the stairs, not daring to look back. She didn't chase after me, but I could feel her eyes burning into my back, the same look she used to give when she knew I wasn't telling the whole truth. And she was right. Something was going on, something big, but I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Not yet. That whole week, I kept up the act, dodging meals, avoiding long conversations, pretending I was just stressed out about finals and papers and group work. But inside, I was a storm, a mess of fear, nausea, confusion, and shame. I was barely sleeping, and when I did, I dreamed about my mama's disappointment. It was always the same. Her face would fall, her voice would break, and she'd say she was done with me. Sunday morning came too fast, and with it, another wave of nausea that hit as soon as I opened my eyes. I lay there for a minute, hoping it would pass, but it only got worse. I heard Mama's voice drifting up from downstairs. "Faith, honey, we're gonna be late for service." I sat up slowly, swallowing hard. "Coming," I shouted back, though every part of me wanted to stay in bed and hide. "Maybe I should skip today," I muttered under my breath. Before I could think of a decent excuse, Mama appeared in my doorway, dressed in her Sunday best, looking every bit the picture of Southern Grace. Her eyes landed on me and instantly filled with concern. "Skip church? Are you feeling poorly?" she asked, stepping closer. "Just a little tired," I replied, forcing a smile. "Been studying real hard." She tilted her head, watching me like she didn't believe a word I said. "You've been tired all week," she said slowly. "Something you want to tell me?" "No, ma'am," I answered quickly. Too quickly. Her eyes narrowed again, but she didn't press further. "All right, be ready in 5 minutes." I nodded, heart pounding, and forced myself out of bed. The church was packed that morning. Everyone was dressed up, smiling, shaking hands, and catching up like always. Mrs. Jones wore her giant pink hat, the one she only brought out on special Sundays, and Mr. Rodriguez sat near the back with his grandkids, who were coloring quietly in the pew. From the outside, everything looked perfect, but I felt like I was sinking. The moment I sat down, the warmth from the church mixed with the perfume and cologne of the congregation made my stomach churn. I tried to focus on the sermon, nodding along like usual, but halfway through, the nausea came back with a vengeance. I felt dizzy. Cold sweat formed on my neck. My face must have gone pale because Mama reached over and grabbed my hand. "Baby? Girl, what's wrong?" she whispered, her voice soft but urgent. "You look like you're about to faint." I shook my head, trying to wave her off, but it was too late. Her eyes were scanning my face, searching for answers, and then something inside me just broke. Maybe it was the hormones. Maybe it was the guilt. Maybe I was just tired of hiding. I turned to her, eyes filling with tears. "Mama," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I have something to tell you." Her hand tightened around mine. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between us, heavier than any hymn or scripture. Her face shifted through a whirlwind of emotions, confusion, shock, disbelief, pain. And then she gasped, loud enough for several people to turn their heads in our direction. "What?" she said, her voice sharp and filled with panic. "It's Glenn's," I said, my voice trembling. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Mama. I didn't know how to tell you." Her eyes widened as if I had struck her. The pew creaked as she stood up suddenly, towering over me. Her voice dropped to a harsh whisper, full of fury and betrayal. "Get out of the church. Right now." I blinked, frozen in place. "Go home," she hissed. "Pack your things. Don't come back to my house. How could you do this to me? Did you even think about what our family and friends would say? Do you not know the traditions and values we hold? You've disgraced yourself, disgraced me." Tears streamed down my face as I stood, heart shattered, legs trembling. I couldn't even see the aisle clearly through the blur. I could feel every eye on me. Mrs. Jones stared from behind her pink hat, lips parted in shock. A hush had fallen over the sanctuary, though the preacher's voice kept going, as if trying to pull the congregation's attention back to anything but the storm unfolding in the third row. I didn't look back. I couldn't. But before I could reach the church doors, before I could escape the weight of what had just happened, a voice called out from behind me, a deep, familiar voice that brought me to a sudden halt. "Stop right there, young lady." I turned slowly, tears still streaming down my cheeks, to see Pastor James standing up from the front pew. His Bible was still in one hand, but his gaze was fixed not on me, on my mama. He stepped into the aisle and walked toward us with a calm but serious expression, one I'd seen him use many times during sermons when he spoke about grace and mercy. His voice was gentle, but there was no mistaking the power in it. "Claudia," he said, standing between us now, his eyes kind but firm, "would you really send your daughter away when she needs you the most?" Mama opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. She looked torn, heart and pride battling it out behind her eyes. "She's having a child out of wedlock," Mama finally said, her voice shaking. "I never raised her to go down that road." Pastor James reached out and touched her arm softly. "Claudia, that shouldn't be the issue here," he said. "Sometimes life doesn't go according to our plans. Sometimes the greatest blessings come wrapped in unexpected packages." He glanced at me, then back at Mama. "You remember when your husband passed?" he asked quietly. "I do. I remember how devastated you were, how lost you felt. But this congregation? We wrapped our arms around you. We brought meals. We helped with faith. We prayed. That's what we're supposed to do." Mama's eyes began to shimmer with unshed tears. She was still staring at me, but something in her expression had shifted. The tightness in her jaw had softened. Her shoulders had slumped. She looked not angry now, but heartbroken. "She's still your daughter, Claudia," Pastor James said gently. "She still needs you." That was all it took. The dam inside her finally broke. Mama stepped forward with tears now running freely down her cheeks. And before I knew it, she had pulled me into her arms. I collapsed into her embrace, sobbing against her shoulder, holding on to her as tightly as I could. "I'm so sorry, baby girl," she whispered into my hair. I wasn't angry at you, I was scared for you. You don't know how hard it is raising a child on your own. I pulled back just a little, enough to look at her face. I'm not alone, Mama, I said, voice trembling. I have Glenn, and I have you, if you'll still have me. Her answer was another squeeze, even tighter than before. That moment, right there in the middle of the church, in front of all our neighbors and friends, was the kind that gets stitched into your memory forever. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real, raw, healing, but of course, life didn't stop there. A few days later, after the dust had settled and the news had spread, thanks mostly to Mrs. Jones, Mama surprised me with a bold statement. It's time to do this properly, she said one morning, straightening the collar of my blouse like I was 12 again. I want to meet Glenn and his family. I blinked. You do? No more secrets, she said firmly. We're not hiding this child or this relationship from anybody. Glenn was quiet when I told him, but I could tell he was nervous. When we pulled into his family's driveway, he reached over and squeezed my hand. You nervous? I asked, half joking. A little, he admitted. But it's time. We walked up the path together, and before we could even knock, the door swung open. And standing there, of all people, was Pastor James. My jaw dropped. For a second, I couldn't form words. Faith, Pastor James said, eyebrows lifting as he looked at me, then over at Glenn. Glenn's son, is this your young lady? Yes, sir, Glenn said, grinning and lacing his fingers with mine. Surprised? Pastor James looked between us for a long moment and then he laughed. A full, hearty laugh that filled the air and somehow settled all my nerves. Well, I'll be, he said. The Lord sure does work in mysterious ways. It was like something out of a movie. The pastor who comforted my mama in church was also the father of the boy who made me feel safe, loved, and brave enough to face the world with a baby on the way. Somehow, all the twists and turns had brought us to this moment. Looking back now, I can't help but smile. Life doesn't always give you clear answers or straight paths. Sometimes it hands you storms, and then gives you just enough light to walk through them. As for Mama, she's doing more than fine. She's already knitting baby booties and suggesting names like Elijah or Grace. And just yesterday, she sat down beside me and said, You know, Sugar, maybe it's time I started getting out more. Mrs. Jones's brother just moved to town. Widowed, loves gardening, and apparently bakes a mean pecan pie. I almost dropped my tea from laughing. Maybe this is what healing looks like. Maybe blessings come wrapped in fear sometimes. And maybe, just maybe, our hearts are bigger than we think. Let's see what happens next.